drugs, taxes, and higher education. If you think that sounds like it's going to be a bleak episode, you'd be surprised. We've got a lot of great news to share with you and a couple of fantastic guests to join us as well. Before we jump into all that, I want to give you a quick invitation to like the Venture Utah Facebook page and share this content. Our ability to continue providing this content hinges completely on how many people we are able to reach. So if you think this content is valuable, please like and share it to help us reach more people. Our first news story is that Civica Rx, a nonprofit pharmaceutical corporation, is officially beginning to provide their first drug to hospitals this month, starting with Riverton Hospital here in Utah. Civica Rx is a collaborative effort between multiple nonprofit organizations and health systems who have come together to solve the problem of overpriced prescription medications. Their primary focus is on drugs that are commonly used in hospitals, such as antibiotics, anesthetics, and other essential injectable medications. The goal is to be able to provide these drugs at a flat rate much lower than the current going rate, and to do so without making special deals with some providers or giving volume discounts to larger operations. The first generic drug that Civica will be providing is vancomycin hydrochloride, an antibiotic used to treat infections that prove resistant to other antibiotics. I personally feel that this is a great thing. While the national debate around the healthcare system continues to rage, here is a group of corporations and nonprofits getting together to find a real solution. This type of innovation and rebellion against the status quo is what makes a free capitalistic society great. Our next story comes from the Enterprise Business Journal. The Utah Foundation has released a report showing that Utahns' overall tax burden is continuing to go down. The property tax burden has stayed basically the same, but the fuel tax burden has gone down, and the income tax burden has gone down primarily because per capita personal income has gone up. Don't ask me how that works because the tax rate doesn't change when you make more money. It's 4.95% across the board. But luckily, you don't have to ask me. If you'd like to know more about the results of the report, you can just go to utahfoundation.org and read the entire report to see their methodology and results. Our last story is highlighting a massive donation from doTERRA to Utah Valley University. doTERRA is based in Pleasant Grove and has signed a 10-year agreement to donate a total of $17.7 million to various departments within UVU. The Enterprise reports a large portion of the donation will support scholarships, online educational opportunities, and athletic programs, and includes the initial gift toward funding a new student-athlete wellness building. Corey Lindley, doTERRA's founding executive, president, and chief financial officer, said, "We have witnessed firsthand how integral UVU is to our community and how effective UVU is in moving the needle when it has sufficient support. We are thrilled to show our support for all that UVU plans and will accomplish." If you are interested in learning more about any of these stories, I would encourage you to go to SLEnterprise.com and subscribe to their weekly newspaper. You can subscribe to the print or digital editions or both. Again, that's SLEnterprise.com for stories that actually matter to you as a business owner. The theme of today's episode is rebellion, doing things our own way and flipping the proverbial bird to the established order. Our first guest today is Dallin Johnson, the owner of Saturn Barter of Utah, to talk about how businesses bartering their services within a community can fit into their growth strategy and help them reach a new audience. Dallin, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Cameron.
It's really nice to have you here. So,
Good to be here.
First question for you, what is Saturn Barter of Utah?
Saturn Barter is a business-to-business trading platform. We're an organization that signs memberships or accumulated of a membership here in northern Utah of businesses that are willing to trade their services back and forth with each other.
Okay, so is it just here in northern Utah or is it everywhere?
No, it's everywhere. In fact, our size, we originated up in Seattle, Utah, but our size of membership around the United States actually grants us access to an organization called IRTA, which is an international trade exchange. So we are a local company with international reach.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's really cool. So how does it, so tell me how bartering works in this kind of organization.
So just like cash, we treat every transaction like it was going to be a cash transaction. Company A has a need or has an expense inside their business, or even if it's a business owner outside his business at his home or his car or whatever it might be, they have an expense that they need to get done, or a service they need to get done. Instead of paying cash or out of pocket for that expense, they offer their services as payment for the service that they need done. Just a way of reaching more business above and beyond what you're currently doing in cash.
So that's really interesting. So what is the advantage of doing it in a group like that as opposed to just directly with another business?
Great question. And there's actually a ton of advantages. The first and foremost is what I just mentioned. Every business has their cash customers or their clientele that they know that they're going to have business from. Reaching more customers is a goal that most businesses have or should have. We provide that avenue to more business. We supply the customers. We have members in our exchange that are willing to offer their services for what they need. So we connect our businesses that sign up with the members that they need or with the new customers that they need.
That's really interesting. So if you've got, so do you just kind of match make? So company A wants this service, company B wants that service, and they just happen to work together and they just exchange?
Kind of. We actually act like a third-party bank. Everything's done online. So we have a platform that members are able to sign in. They can see their account, how much that they have in their account. They can also see our whole membership directory. Let's say that I own a carpet company and my roof is leaking. If I need to get that roof fixed, I can get on my account, find what roofing companies are with Saturn Barter, contact them, get the job done, and then they process that complete job all on trade rather than me having to pay out of pocket or take out a business loan or whatever it might be to get that service done.
Interesting. So they don't necessarily have to be interested in each other's products.
Right. It can be indirect.
It can be, exactly, indirect. One way here, one way there. Everybody just kind of pools into the middle.
Exactly.
So that makes me very curious about how all that. So how do those accounts work? Can you go below a zero balance?
Yes, and that's more just like a bank would take a risk giving a line of credit. Saturn Barter will take risk giving lines of credit to businesses if it's an expense that's going to help their cash or boost their cash sales. A great example is I had a carpet cleaning company that had a van breakdown, and it was their loan van. So their cash-making vehicle was literally broke down. Didn't have cash on hand to pay for it, so he got the transmission repair done in trade. That $3,000 job granted him access to be able to start making more cash for his business, and the repair was done on trade.
Nice.
So,
okay.
Yeah, so in situations like that, we as Saturn Barter will take a line of credit and extend it to someone so that they are able to get that service done. The carpet company now cleans carpets and cleans windows and whatever else that they offer on top of their cash sales to pay for that transmission that was done a few months ago.
Okay, so how do you keep everybody, line of credit to help them go under negative balance, but I'm just kind of working the numbers in my head. I'm not super great at math, so you can help me out with this part.
No, that's fine.
Where wouldn't everybody's accounts kind of have to balance at zero? Like you've got people who have built up credit by providing services on trade.
Sure.
People who have used it by taking others' trade. Wouldn't it all just kind of equal out to zero?
Yes, more or less. Because of our, like I said, we have access to IRTA or international trade exchanges. We, as an ownership or as a management of Saturn, we're able to trade with other exchanges outside of Utah. And so that kind of offsets the zero factor because we'll purchase printers from a company in Connecticut that help a print shop here. So that's an expense that we take on. But yes, in the end, everything zeroes out. So there may be members that have $24,000 in trade or money that they have to spend, and we might have other companies that are, $8,000 or $9,000 in the hole because they just got done spending money on a job.
Gotcha. And then it all evens out.
And it all evens out over time. Yes.
So to get involved into an organization like this, I mean, it's very interesting compared to doing things with cash. The idea, hey, maybe there's another option where you can get these things done in a way that benefits everybody more.
Absolutely.
We all charge more than it costs us to provide our service. We have to.
Absolutely.
So when you're calculating the value of that trade, is it based on how much so if I'm providing a video, it's $1,000 video, it might cost me $400 or $500 to do.
Sure.
So do I get $400 or $500 of trade value or $1,000?
Excellent question. Actually, we keep dollar for dollar. So we want the trade dollar and the cash dollar to be equivalent.
Okay.
So if you offer your services and you would bill that person if it was in cash $1,000, then bill them $1,000 in trade, because then you're not losing that margin that you set on your product or your service. We want you to be compensated fully like you would be in cash, because when you turn around to spend that trade, we want it to be that you spend it just like you would be cash.
Gotcha.
That's how it keeps more cash money in your pocket.
Gotcha. And that's fantastic because, again, it only cost me $400 or $500, but then I've got
exactly
that trade
one of the
bill.
best. Excuse me. One of the best examples of what you're saying is a restaurant. Most restaurants are into a meal 30%. That 30% means that they have 70% margin or markup on that item. So if they are able to serve more plates of food to more customers and they do it on trade, they're really only into that trade 30%, but they're receiving 100% of the trade costs when they go turn around and spend it.
So I have a couple of questions I want to get to, and I don't want to forget either one, but we'll work through that. All right, real quick. You may not know the answer to this question.
'Kay.
Tax implications. How do the things that we get trade value out of?
Yep.
They might be personal items, they might be business items, like a fence for the house or a new car for the business. How does that all play in the tax world? Is it the same as cash?
Absolutely, yes. So we track everyone's expenses, transactions, everything like the IRS requires us to, off of their EIN or their federal ID number. So we keep a detailed record monthly. You get a statement saying what you've done in trade that month. Yearly, we mail out a 1099-B to every company that is signed up with us as members that highlights what they've done in trade so that they're not, it's not under the table, it's not behind anyone's back. It's foolproof and the IRS makes us do it, but yeah, it's 100% accurate.
That is awesome and super disappointing.
Yeah, for a lot of businesses that are hoping to avoid that, absolutely. Yeah.
I kid. No, that's fantastic that you're able to keep it above board that way so that no business owner has to worry about anything.
Absolutely.
So my next question, Saturn, how do you guys make a living off of this?
We make a 6% transaction fee.
Okay.
You go out with your family and spend $100 at one of our restaurants that are in our network, we make $6 off that meal. On a larger scale, you get a $10,000 roof for your home, you're paying $600 in cash to get that roof, we make the $600.
I see. Okay, so that 6% is the person who's buying the services?
Buying and selling, both sides.
Both sides. Oh,
Yep.
Both sides pay 6%.
Yep.
Okay.
So and that's pretty average nationwide. Some trade exchanges are at 10, some trade exchanges are at 15% just on one side. We break it up to 12 on both sides just to make it more manageable. If you're providing the service, it's not a huge cost. You're paying 10% off of what the service is you're already providing. We split it up into 6, so it's a little bit more manageable.
Okay, gotcha. So looking at, I would imagine a lot of businesses as they're considering whether to join, a lot of that factor. So a lot of what they're going to be considering is whether there are services that they want.
Absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit about the types of businesses that are most common, like what services are most available?
I think the most common services that we have are the services related to driving a business or growing your business.
Really?
Print needs, signage. If you have a business that has fleet vehicles, then mechanics or maintenance on those fleet vehicles. Those are all hard cash costs that every business has during a month or a quarter or even a year that otherwise are cash expenses. So if you can take on more customers in your schedule that simply pay for the expenses that you have, that means that your cash customers that you have are just going to be, cash in your pocket. It's a way of paying for those expenses that run a business without having to pay cash to do them.
That's phenomenal. So would you say it's primarily business to business focused as a group?
Yes, I think so. I would say that. Obviously, we have people that use it for personal. If you need to go to a dentist or an eye doctor and if your work doesn't offer insurance, we have that on trade. So it's a way around some of those personal expenses that you might have. But yeah, it's really up to the discretion of the business owner, whether it's a need he has at home or she has at home, or if it's a business expense that is ultimately going to bring them more cash customers. That's our goal.
Okay, so how accessible is Saturn when you have a customer or provider that is giving a lot, they're giving a lot in trade and they're not using a lot in trade, and they start to get a little bit disgruntled or dissatisfied with the access that they have.
Sure.
Do they have access to Saturn to try to fix some of those concerns?
Yes, all the time. I give my number out to everyone. Our emails are on our webpage, our Facebook page. Our Google reviews show that we answer the phone immediately. So we're always available to help out, whether it's through text or email or phone. we can help our customers. We do have customers that bank up and they get into the thousands and they're like, hey, what should I spend this on? And it might be a family trip that they end up spending it on. But one way or another, we help them, especially if it's a large expense that they're saving up for.
That is awesome. So if I can just, he did not pay me to say what I'm about to say, but so I've run into bartering organizations before, and I've asked them the questions that I've just asked you, and they didn't have good answers. So, and I feel like you have, or Saturn has really developed a bartering platform that addresses the major flaws with a bartering system.
Yes.
And turned it into a really viable way to rebel against, the way the business is normally done.
Absolutely, yeah.
As an option for business owners who are, I'm dealing with that right now. We've got equipment that's breaking down, trying to figure out how we're going to replace it, and we're waiting for invoices to come in to see if we get the cash flow. And if there was, option number 3 or door C or whatever, that would be a valuable asset to have in the business. Are there annual membership dues, or is it simply the transaction fee?
We have a one-time sign-up fee.
Okay.
That includes your access to your dashboard, is what we call it. It's I like to describe it as like an Amazon Facebook mesh.
Okay.
Members can log on. They have their own profile that highlights what they do, what they're willing to do on trade. If they have specials that they're running, it's all right there on their profile.
Wow.
But they also have access to an online marketplace that you can actually buy in trade money from our marketplace, and it ships straight to your house.
Oh,
Kind of
cool.
like Amazon. So cuts down on Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, anniversaries, stuff like that. Employee appreciation, customer appreciation. We have businesses that use it for everything like that. And it's simple as logging into your account, ordering, and shipping it to your house.
Wow, that is phenomenal. So for people to reach out, if they want to learn more about Saturn, what is the best way to contact you?
Google Saturn Barter. That's the best way. Our webpage comes up, SaturnBarter.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Saturn Barter of Utah on Facebook. But yes, we actually have if you're a prospect and you're interested in learning more about barter, you can go to our website and fill out a form that gets emailed directly to us, and then we contact you. So if you have a service or a business that would benefit or has expenses and doesn't have the cash to pay for them, then reach out to us. We'll go through your business, we'll go through your expenses and see, hey, look, we can mitigate this expense by doing it on trade, or we can swap out this one so that it's not a monthly reoccurring expense that you have. And we go from there.
That is awesome. Well, that's all the time we have right now, but Dallin,
Great.
this was fantastic. This was great.
Thanks, Cameron.
Thank
I
you for
appreciate
being
it.
here.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Our next guest, Joe Rangel, is back to continue our discussion on the rebellion against order and structure. While our desire to rebel can be a great strength and an advantage, it can also stop us from getting to where we need to go. Before we get that conversation, I'd like to remind you to head to ventureutah.com and click Become a Guest to request to be on the show. There will be a form for you to fill out, and we'll get a notification when you do. We will then reach out to you when we have an opening that we feel like would be a good fit for your business. With that said, we're going to get into a conversation with Joe again about our tendency as entrepreneurs to rebel against order and structure, how we can use that to our advantage, and how we can avoid having it be a disadvantage and inhibiting us in our growth. Joe, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Cameron.
It's always great to have you on.
It's wonderful to be here.
This was good. This is good. I am very excited. So we last week, for those who may have missed last week, we talked about say the 3 most common struggles that business owners run into that you have seen as you've coached them through those struggles. And one of the ones, I think was the very first one that you mentioned, was rebellion against order and structure. So can you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Well, so it's probably one of the most challenging, I guess, obstacles to face because it's pretty insidious in nature. Like most people would never wake up and go, oh, I think I'll sabotage myself today by not doing the things I said I'd do for my business. Or, I talked to you a little bit before the show about people that are going on diets or people that are trying to work out. Nobody wakes up and goes, I thought I was going to work out today and get healthier. I think I'll sabotage myself. So they don't do that. But it happens because the entrepreneurial mindset starts to feel controlled by any form of restriction. I don't know if it's even just the entrepreneurial mindset. Most people, don't like to be controlled. But if you're in the common workforce if you're going to a job, somebody controls when you show up, when you leave. You know, you're kind of on a time schedule. A lot of people get tired of doing that and having somebody control their life, so they decide to go start a company. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I have all this free time on my hands, and I think I'll let myself get distracted. And there's a reason behind it. There's kind of to me, there's a lie that your brain tells you. So you almost have to rewire your neural pathways to develop a new form of thinking. Like, my schedule is jammed tight, you've seen it. Most people would look at it and think, that drives me insane. I look at it as freedom. Because if I use my calendar properly, I can put fun things in there, business things in there, vacations in there, time away in there, being here in there.
For which we're very grateful.
Well, thank you. I'm grateful to be here. But it's those types of things, and you have to kind of get your brain to thinking a different way, because it's programmed to feel like a calendar is controlling and restrictive. And I can walk you through a process. I don't know if you have any questions on your own, if you've ever noticed yourself rebelling, but if not, I can walk you through a little process and give people something that they can be aware of, that they can work with in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel personally that often I feel, and this is probably what you're describing, where I just tend to get frustrated, where, you know, like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'll submit to this order for a while. I'll do this routine for a while, but then I expect results to be there. And if the results aren't what I expected them to be, I get frustrated and I try something else. And
Right.
Is that kind of what you mean?
Kind of. That could be a form of rebellion. That could be a form of distraction, creative distraction, you know, to just get off of something that feels onto something that's a little less tedious. But that's really more about staying consistent, more about consistency. I think it does play into it, though. Really what happens, though, is your brain, think about what your brain tells you. As an entrepreneur or somebody that does their own thing, whether it be direct selling, having your own company, something like that, your brain says, I started this, or I want to do this because I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. That's, you know, which we can do in a way, but you do have to work.
Yeah.
You can't just go, I think I'll sit around and look at my set today and not talk to anybody, and my business is going to magically grow.
You're describing a very wonderful day, Joe.
But that does happen sometimes, either figuratively or literally. It can happen to a lot of people out there. So your brain tries to tell you that flying by the seat of your britches is free. It's liberating. So it's a big fat lie. If you understand that that's a big fat lie, then you can start to look beneath the surface and see what happens. When you become obedient to yourself, when you keep your commitments to you, that actually starts to equal true freedom. So when you get disobedient and you're not following what you said you would do, whether it could be a diet, it could be anything like that. The challenge is it's not just people imposing order and structure on you, it's mostly you abiding by your own. You know, and then that rebellion that takes place beneath the surface, where you find yourself doing things that are not in your best interest.
You know, it seems to me that that actually solves one of the paradoxes of life, if you will. That sounds very dramatic, but basically the way I view that is, if you do the things you want, you'll get the consequences you don't want. You have to do things that you don't want to do in order to get the consequences you do want. And so it's kind of paradoxical, but that seems to solve it.
It does, in a way. So, you know, we have a mutual friend, John Gates, that talked the other day about, I'll do the work today. I work really hard today so that I can play tomorrow. So he says, I work hard today so that I can play tomorrow and other people can't afford to. And I think it's the way to look at that, to put forth an effort. It doesn't have to be nonstop, you know. Can I say balls to the wall?
Yep.
I think I did. Excuse me.
You can,
but
because you did.
But it's, you know, it doesn't have to be that way nonstop all the time. So if you understand it, so if you go, okay, so if I don't keep my word to myself, I lower my self-esteem. As soon as you don't do what you said you were going to do, your self-esteem takes a hit. As soon as your self-esteem takes a hit, your control over your life starts to feel negligible. You start to feel like your life is running you instead of you running your life. Then that leads to massive guilt and then frustration, and if you're not careful, you can take yourself into a downward spiral. Conversely, the other side, which feels controlling and restrictive, being obedient to yourself, to structure, to order, that actually leads to freedom. So when you actually do keep your word, when you honor your commitments, you do what you said you were going to do, even if it was difficult or even if you didn't want to, you feel better about yourself. So your esteem takes a rise. From there, then you start to go, wow, I actually have some power and control in my life. And then that leads to true freedom. And the sky's the limit on that. But when you abide by that, when you abide by that structure and order and start to understand that sets you free, like I said, everything starts to fall in line. You can plan fun things, you can plan busy things, but everything is part of a plan. You can plan not planning. Like on the weekends, I leave my schedule pretty open unless I'm traveling. And I don't put things in there because I let my wife and family kind of dictate what I'm going to do on the weekend. If I'm traveling, I put time in there an hour before I go to make sure that that's blotted out to get to the airport, to show up on time. And that's all in there. If I have a date night with my wife, that's in there. This is calendared in there. So in any other meetings that I go to, spiritual time, calendared in there, time with kids. And I don't do it like on every single thing. There's times like at 5 o'clock, I don't have anything in my calendar and I do whatever I want to do, or honestly, whatever my wife wants me to do usually. But
ain't that the truth?
I get off and then go to work. So. But do you understand the difference? It's the mindset that says, ooh, this calendar is controlling versus, this calendar is liberating. It lets me know where I'm going to be. It lets me know what I'm doing.
Well, and I think that's, it goes to, and I'm not sure if this is something that we talked about or something that I found elsewhere, but it's viewing, it goes along with the idea of viewing yourself as a community. Your past you, your yesterday you, is not today you.
Right.
But it's still you. And your 10 year from now you have responsibility for 10 years from now you. And yesterday you've made commitments to yesterday you. And so now you've got to fulfill those commitments. It's kind of, it can be kind of confusing, I guess, but that's the way.
Well, no. But see, now, if you say you have to, then that drives obligation, and then obligation drives rebellion. If you start saying to yourself, this is something I want to do, this is a commitment I made for myself, this is what I said I want to provide for my family, or this is the money I wanted to make, and I'm doing this because I choose to, that fuels that energy to keep going. But the obligation, the control, the restriction, that starts to squelch that, and that creates the rebellion.
But acknowledging, so I guess that was just a word choice that I wasn't being very careful about. The real point was focusing on the fact that this was you. That this was you who decided you wanted to do this.
Yes.
And you made commitments to yourself because you wanted to.
And it might be good to honor those.
And yes, exactly. Especially as you pointed out, if you don't honor those, your self-esteem can take a hit.
And then there are consequences. Sometimes, you've probably met people that will be out, be an entrepreneur, start a business, and then end up going back into the workforce because they want somebody else to impose that structure and order on them because they can't create it for themselves. So kind of a sad place to be.
It's, in your experience, is that sometimes the right choice for overall happiness?
To go back into the workforce?
Yeah.
I think it's unique to the individual. For me, I don't know if you think about it as an entrepreneur. I use a phrase when I'm working with entrepreneurs that we become hopelessly unemployable because you really can't. If you are a true entrepreneur and you have a true entrepreneur spirit, it's impossible to go back and let somebody impose that on you. Somebody might be able to do it for a short period of time, but then you're going to get fed up and leave. So it becomes kind of a tragic, never-ending story.
So it's one of those proceed with caution type of, a type of ideas. So it's interesting because obviously we are all on the goal to have a more fulfilled, happier life. And the idea that, we constantly sabotage ourselves accidentally by viewing things in the wrong way, viewing them as obligations instead of opportunities, things that we chose to do, things that our yesterday selves chose to do.
Right.
Now, I just lost the question I was going to ask.
Well, I was going to say that hopefully our tomorrow self will help us accomplish, but I don't know if that was in line.
I think
I like the way that you're using that. But honestly, and we get wrapped up and start thinking that there's something wrong with us and we can't do this or we can't be successful, when it's just a thought process. There's nothing wrong with us as individuals. They're just bad habits. They're things that get repeated over and over again, and then we kind of perpetuate them in our lives, and as we perpetuate them, they become very destructive, or they can be.
So I know we've got to wrap up the segment, but I wanted to touch on really quick for people who want to get started talking with you, you do a free consultation, a free hour of coaching.
I do.
And you want people to take the assessment first, the Habit Finder assessment. Can you remind us of the URL for that Habit Finder?
So it's toevolvecoaching.com. They
Okay.
can go direct there, and then on my web page, they'll see take the assessment. Just click on that link, take the assessment there. Then from there, there's also a schedule time with me, and they can just click right on that and schedule time right into my calendar. And ideally, it's great to take the assessment first because it gives a good understanding of my coaching process, but it's not absolutely necessary.
Okay.
So if somebody's just curious, they're welcome to schedule in time.
That's fantastic. So if you want to do that hour of coaching with celebrity Joe Rangel of Venture Utah fame, you are welcome to do so. Joe travels around the country doing coaching and workshops for people. Has coached some of the most successful people in their fields, and I know that from personal experience that he's done wonders for me and my business, and I think that he would do a great job for you. So if you are looking for something like that in your life, I would encourage you to go to toevolvecoaching.com and check him out. So Joe, thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Cameron. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so my vision for Venture Utah has always been about strengthening and connecting the small business community in Utah. This is our 10th episode of Venture Utah, and it has already become clear that while the connections we're helping to make are valuable, one thing that we're doing much more directly is strengthening. To that end, we decided we'd like to give a little more emphasis on training and education. In the interest of doing so, I want to do a little education and training on when you're first starting a business. So my first piece of advice is to be patient, but not complacent. So real quick, I've obviously started a business. I started a business, it completely failed, and then a few years later, I started Robin Hood Studios, and this has been going far better. And so that first piece of advice would be to be patient, but not complacent. And there's a difference. Patience is understanding that things are going to take time, and that no matter what you do, no matter how much you put in, things just take time. But that doesn't mean you're complacent. That doesn't mean that you are allowing yourself to be passive. Patience, you can be actively patient, but you can't be actively complacent. That's called being passive. So the difference there obviously is whether you're taking action or whether you're not taking action. The second piece of advice I have for you is to play the long game. And this might seem like it's redundant with being patient versus being complacent. But playing the long game is a little bit different from being patient. You have to agree with yourself, you have to allow yourself to be patient in order to then choose to play the long game. Playing the long game, what that usually manifests as in terms of actions, things that you're doing, is honing your craft. Spending time becoming better at what you do. Spending time on your business, not just in your business. That comes with developing relationships. That comes with not charging more than frankly you are worth right now, or your labor is worth right now. Being clear about how you want to progress and where you want to be. Starting a business is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not, hey, you work hard for 5 years and then you live the rest of your life on a mansion in Oahu. Okay, starting a business is growing and spending very, very long hours and not getting compensated for them for a long time, and then eventually you're making only a little bit less than everybody else your age who stayed in the workforce. And then eventually you're making a little bit more than everybody else your age who stayed in the workforce. And then eventually you're making way more than everyone else your age who stayed in the workforce. And then eventually you get to retire a few years before they do with a lot more money than they have. That is the reality of business, of owning and running a business. And that's what I mean by playing the long game. Sorry if that depresses you, I didn't mean to, but my next piece of advice would be to be organized. Get organized and stay organized. You need to be doing your bookkeeping and your accounting. You need to keep your contracts organized. You need to keep any sensitive information from clients. They give you payment information, things like that. You need to be very careful with that and organized. Also be organized with your time. Just like Joe was talking about now, using your calendar as a tool to give yourself freedom. Be organized in the way that you spend your time. Focus on blocking out time to do the things that you know you need to do, and you feel free to do that in advance. I do a monthly planning, I do weekly planning, I do quarterly planning, I do yearly planning. Sometimes I freak myself out with how much time I spend planning, but it is a valuable thing to do, and it makes the rest of my time so much more productive than it would have been otherwise, that it by far outweighs the amount of time it takes to actually plan. My next piece of advice would be don't mix personal and business finances. Personal finances, home finances, and business finances are very different anyway. Good business finance practices and good personal finance practices, there's some crossover, but there are also some very important differences. And if you mix those two, it becomes a lot more difficult come tax time. It becomes a lot more difficult when you're trying to figure out how to put yourself on salary. It becomes very difficult when you want to try to hire employees, or if you want to write off business expenses such as equipment. If you want to itemize equipment as assets that have a cash value, you can't do that with your personal finances if you've mixed your personal finances. And the longer you take to separate the two, the more difficult it will be to do so, and the more severe the consequences will be when you finally do. So that would be my next piece of advice. Don't mix personal and business finances. My next piece of advice would be to buy an hour of a business attorney's time. Sit down with a business attorney and just pick their brain on every possible legal issue you might encounter as you run your business. I'd like to get more specific here, but because businesses are so different, I really can't. So that's why I say buy an hour of a business attorney's time. So if you are a plumber, or if you're a photographer, or if you are selling products, you need to find out what you might run into legally and how to protect yourself. A lot of these questions can be very basic, such as your business formation. Are you going to be an LLC, or are you going to choose a different business entity type in order to protect yourself, your personal finances, and your personal assets from business issues? Please do yourself a favor and buy an hour of a business attorney's time. Along with that, you want to also get a good CPA to do your taxes. Emphasis on good, emphasis on CPA, emphasis on do your taxes. So get a good CPA to do your taxes. Also, pay for a couple hours of their time to teach you how to do proper bookkeeping. If you can do your own bookkeeping on a monthly basis or a weekly basis or a daily basis on your own, without having to pay an accountant to do those things for you, you will save a lot of money on those services. It will also be much faster for that good CPA to do your taxes each year, which saves you money each year, and you'll have important, very important business insights as to how much your business costs you to run. If you have a $1,000 client, how much does it cost you to service that client? If you don't know the answer to that question, you don't have a business yet. You have a hope and a dream. So you need to if you don't understand how that works, if you don't understand how to categorize transactions and see where your money is going, you need to do yourself a massive favor, pay for a couple hours of an accountant's time to teach you how to do good bookkeeping. Now, if you can afford it, obviously there are bookkeeping services. You can hire somebody to do your bookkeeping. That's fantastic too, but at the very minimum, learn how to do it yourself. Next piece of advice, and almost the last piece, is to stay humble. There are very few things, there are probably some things, but very few things that can kill your business and your success faster than your own ego. And this can manifest in a lot of ways. People charge a lot more than they should be charging when they're first getting started. I know, because I was one of them. When you've got to understand where you fit in the grand scheme of things and understand that the person sitting across from you needs to see the value in what you provide. And if they don't see the value in how much you're charging, you need to charge less if you want that customer. Now, that's a bit broad of a suggestion, and it doesn't apply everywhere, but the underlying principle is to stay humble. But don't let that humility allow yourself to be walked all over, which is my next piece of advice. Be assertive. It is very possible to be both humble, unassuming, and assertive. You've got to make sure that you are taken care of. If you are working, if you are charging less than you can survive on, that's a problem. That has nothing to do with ego or humility. That means you need to be more assertive in charging what you need to charge. This will help a lot with mindset as well. You would be surprised how many people are willing to say yes if you are just willing to ask. How reasonable people can be when you simply say what you need. Say, yes, I can do that, but I'm going to need this, this, this. They say, oh, okay, that's fine, we can do that. Being assertive is an essential element to being a successful business owner, because if you're not assertive, no one's going to do it for you. You don't have a supervisor, you don't have coworkers, you don't have a manager, people who can step in and do that part for you. You have to be assertive and go after what you want. So those are just a couple of quick little tips. I actually had a very long, detailed script for this portion of the show where I was very specific on pricing strategies, and after a lot of thought, I felt like it'd be better to just stay a little bit high level, because those principles are a lot more important than the minutia. You can work at the minutia anytime. You can, again, hiring an attorney for an hour, paying for an hour of an attorney's time or a business coach's time, something like that. Work out the details like that. They're different for every business anyway. So that's my thoughts. That is it for our show for today. Thank you for being with us. A reminder to like and share this content if you think it's valuable, and if you think that other business owners would benefit from it, please like and share, and we will catch you next time on Venture Utah.